And now we're going to begin the last part of our chess project. So this is going to be the staging portion and texturing. So at the moment, none of our models have textures, and some of them have texture mapping that is pretty much next to useless. So let's start with the texture mapping. Now if we click on our rook here, I'm going to click on the material editor, but this particular version of the material editor, I don't like the way it works. So I'm going to hold down on the mouse button and then release after hovering over this one that looks like a washing machine. That opens up this version of the material editor. Now with 3ds Max 2022 and later, they have included the Arnold Vendor as the default vendor that is used for the materials, which is really nice for people using it because that means they have pretty much streamlined ray tracing in about as simple a way as possible. Now, one of the things I like about this particular setup here is they have a presets section right here for the physical materials. If I click on finishes, there are all these different finishes that somebody else has made to give me a decent start. So I'm going to first select, let's go with, which is the one I wanted? Masonry. There it is. So masonry is this brick material right here. And if I click material, then assign to selection, you can't really tell much going on right here. But if I click this little teapot with a lightning bolt, that'll very quickly render out the scene as it is right now. And you see, we've got a lot of stretching going on here that makes very little sense. And then we got the bricks actually squashed down right there. And if I apply the same material to the pawn, it's going to look even worse. So material, assign to selection. So instead of having the stretching, it doesn't have anything except for this gray happening right here. So this stretching is happening here simply because of how we made it. We're using the bevel tool. And this gray happening here is happening because when we first made the pawn, we used the spline tool, right? So we are on the shape splines line right here. Line is a one-dimensional shape, so the texture mapping by default for it is along that one dimension. And then we're trying to apply a two-dimensional image to that singular dimension and then wrap it around 360 degrees. This actually doesn't work at all, so that's why this is just gray right here. So we're going to fix our texture mapping first, and we're going to do this in the easy way. So with the rook selected, I'm going to go to the Modify tab, and I'm going to add a Uvw Map Modifier. Now, planar is the method that it chooses to begin with. The mappings here are all projection methods. Planar is going to assume that you see this box right here. Let me move this to the side here. Squares there, squares here. This line is that square, same for there. So basically, if we had a projector over top of this rook, it would be taking our texture and sending a overlay straight down onto the rook there. So if I were to render right here, you can see we have the brick pattern going straight down. Let's go ahead and get out of that. But if I render right here, because the overlay is coming from above, it's got this weird stretching that you can't see is happening from above, but once you get the side view, it's happening. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to select cylindrical. And now, because I have default shader turned on, you can actually see the bricks are showing up more or less properly right there. Now the top, again, we don't have proper bricks. We could hit cap and it would show the bricks, but I really don't like the way how that looks, so we're just going to leave cap off. I mean, we're not even going to use the bricks for the final texture anyways, we're just using it as a quick reference for understanding whether or not the mapping is appropriate. So clicking on the pawn, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to come all the way down here on the modifier tab, select Uvw Map, select cylindrical, and you can see the cylinder is going the wrong direction. That's an easy fix. If we just come down this way, we have 3 different alignments. Z is the one that's selected by default. I know Y is wrong, it's going to be like that, and X is the right direction, but it doesn't quite fit the pawn as snugly as it did on the rook. So if we click the fit button right here, it changes this to fit it like that. Additionally, you can manually change the fit of the projection by clicking right here, then clicking Gizmo. You can move it side to side. You can click the rotate tool, rotate it around, and you can grab the scaling tool, increase, decrease the tiling. Either way you want to do it, through the rollout panel or through the gizmo, that's really up to you. Thing of note with the gizmo, this green line back here, that represents the seam line. So this is going to be the left side of the texture, and this is going to be the right side of the texture, and they just wrap around and meet up with each other on the back side there. Now with the cylinder mapping, it may help to think of that as kind of like a reverse lampshade, where if you have some type of image on a lampshade and you turn on the light, the image on the lampshade, if it's a thin lampshade and a thick material for the image, is going to cast shadows onto the wall. Go the other direction. The thing we're casting shadows on is in the middle of the lampshade, and our light's coming from the outside, casting through the texture and showing onto the object. It's a weird way of wording it, but that's what I'm going to go with. And our texture mapping for all these other objects are also going to be messed up, and they're going to be messed up in the same way. So if you select the bishop, again, we're going to add a UVW map. We're going to select cylinder. So we're going to scroll down, click on X, and then click on fit. That'll fix it like it did for the pawn. The queen is going to be more like the rook in the way the texture map is messed up. So we're going to go UVW map, again, cylinder, and we're not going to worry about the capping for any of these. If we were doing a more professional project, we would only be using this as the starting point for the texturing, and since this isn't a professional project, we're going to go ahead and let the minor flaws exist. So cylindrical, the right alignment is already selected. Fit doesn't do anything, so it's already good there. King's probably going to be the same. So once we add the UVW map, and then click cylindrical. That's our projection method. Actually, let's click fit. Yeah. So our fit's fine, and the projection's in the right direction. So opening up our material panel again, if I hit A with my material selected, whatever object I currently have selected will have the material assigned to it. Well, I gotta select the material like that. And then we come to the knight. Tonight's going to be a little bit of a tricky one. First off, again, we used a spline in order to make most of it, so the texture mapping just simply doesn't exist. If we do a plane, from the side it's going to look almost right. From the front and the back it's going to look a little wonky. If we choose cylindrical, again we need to change it to the x-axis and then fit. It's a little funny, but it'll work. And again, it's not like I'm going to be using the brick for the final render, so it'll be fine. And just so you can see what that looks like if I were to render it, you're going to notice that there's some extra shadows going on where the cracks are. That is because this masonry texture, this masonry material, includes a bump map. And a bump map is just basically going to create shadows based off of how it's defining where there should be some type of indentation on the object. Alright, so let's close that. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to change our finish right here. And you're going to notice that as soon as we change it, all of these change as well. Now I selected brush metal, which isn't that great of a metal for our purposes, material for our purposes just yet, because if you notice when I hit the teapot with the gear, I can kind of see that it's a metallic piece, but everything's black right now. Brushed metal really should be more reflective, and all we're getting is just the glossy reflections there. So what's going on here is it is reflecting, but if you look at our background here, the only thing we have is nothingness. So we have nothingness reflecting off of our pieces with a bit of light. Some of the other materials, metal materials, show up even less whenever we do that. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and add a background to our environment. So if we come up here to rendering and then click on environment, we've got background, color, environment map. We're going to click where it says none there, and then we're going to do Bitmap Lookup. And I have a couple of pictures saved in my photos library. And these are public domain images. Now if I scroll down a little bit, that comes from Dr. Strange. I'm going to tell you right now, those make the renders look really nice. But let's try the public domain one. Alright, so whatever is in the background whenever you render is going to show, it's going to calculate how much light is being cast on the objects. So if I render at this point right here, we see more of the background rendering over, being reflected off the objects. Light, that's a decent amount of lighting. Chess pieces are floating in the middle of nothing, which is obviously not a good thing. We'll worry about that in a moment. And let's rotate around so that we have darker stuff in the background. And we click render. And the background didn't rotate like I expected. All right. So we'll just go ahead and leave that alone there. We'll deal with the background a little bit more later. Next thing we want to do is we're going to go ahead and make a chessboard. So chessboard's going to be really simple for us. So first off, let's zoom out. This is 6 pieces wide, so our chessboard should probably come out to here since the chessboard is going to have 8 pieces across, 8 squares across. So we're going to click New Object, Geometry, and Extended Primitives, and we're going to grab Chamfer Box. Why Chamfer Box? Because I like the way the rounded corners look. I wish I had a better reason than that, but it's 100%. I just like the way the rounded corners look. Just going to click right there, move the mouse up a little bit. That's going to round out the corners. Zoom out a bit, and our pieces are inside of our thing. What I'm going to do to make life easy is I'm going to drop this so that the top of our chessboard is right on the 0 plane for the vertical alignment. All of our chess pieces are now floating in the air. Let's go ahead and drag those down. And then our chessboard, we need to apply some type of chessboard looking material. That's going to be a fairly easy process. So again, we're going to open up our material editor. I'm going to click right here. And these are just various material slots we can use in order to add more materials to our scene. So finishes, I happen to know that glossy varnished wood looks kind of nice on this one. So right here where it says base color, if we didn't have a a map defining what the material looks like, this would determine what the color is for most of our finishes. If I click on M right here, again, M stands for map. It's going to take me to this screen right here. Click M again. And right here is the image that is being used currently for this wooden appearance. Let me apply the material to the chessboard just so you can see what it looks like. So that's what the chessboard currently looks like. And just basic tabletop look. All right. So I'm going to close out of that, hit cancel. I'm going to click on that. And earlier I downloaded an image of a chessboard. So I'm going to click this PC, no, this libraries. No. Where's my downloads folder? Oh, wait, I put it in pictures anyways. So there's my pictures folder. There's the chessboard I downloaded. I'm going to click open. And it doesn't look quite right at the moment. If I render this out, you'll see the squares are there. It's very clearly a checkered pattern board. The edges, they got these lines going on here, so you could claim it's just wood going on there. I do want to make some changes to this. And this is a little bit reflective, so you can see the chess pieces are actually being reflected off the board, as is the background here. All right, so let me close that. And then we are going to, with the chessboard selected, click on the Modify tab. First off, this is not a square. That chessboard should definitely be a square. So let's do 150 by 150. Oops, that's 250. And for the height, let's make it a little bit thinner. 5 should be good. Nope. I guess we'll stick with 8. And of course, by doing that, I need to readjust where the top of the chessboard is. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is on the modifier list, I'm going to select Uvw Map. Now right now, it does not have a planar, well, it has a planar map now, but before it did not. With the planar map, I just want to leave that as what we have, and then we're going to go to Uvw Unwrap, unwrap UVW. And this modifier is going to let us define exactly where each polygon falls on our texture. So if I scroll down here and click Open UV Editor, I get this screen right here. And if I click this little pull down right here, I can select my chessboard texture and have it display in this checker box right here. Now if I select right here on the chessboard, it'll select the polygon that relates to it inside my UV editor. I can right click on it and then click break and move it independently of all the other polygons. The polygons that are remaining, if I try to move them without breaking them, you'll see that it stretches some of the other polygons around like that. So what I want to do isn't so much stretching anything. I'm going to break a couple of rules. First off, by scaling this down to right about the size of one of the squares, and then positioning it on top of it. And what that's going to do is if I click off of everything over here, you see I've now got a black underside and black border around the chessboard. Ignore the fact that the checkered pattern is a little messed up right there. That's because the top of our chessboard is off to the side. So let's move this back over here and then scale it up so that it takes up the entire area of the texture. So now our chessboard looks like that. Now because of how we did this, if we wanted to, this might break stuff. Let's find out. I'm going to go to the camper box here. I'm going to increase the fillet to something a little more rounded. Come up to UVW map, and you'll see that regardless, that's still like that. If I go to Edit Poly, Polygon Selection, and just select this top box here, Scaling Tool, I can scale it down, and the texture is scaling with it, and we've got a border along the outside. That border is a little thick though, so we'll just put it right back where it was. All right. So now we've got our chessboard, we've got our chess pieces. I'm going to go ahead and set this thing up. Now, personally, I'm not a big fan of the material I picked. We've got several other materials we could use for our chess pieces. I know I've seen some people having a preference for this copper material right here. Let's see what that looks like if we render it out. That's not that bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the chessboard first, and then we'll worry about the materials. I'm going to hit cancel on that. So let's close the material. Let's grab the move tool. Click right here so that way we don't have the polygon selection active, and grab the queen. Now on this top view, I'm going to change it to default shading. I'm going to move the queen to right there, and notice that my chessboard is actually a little bit too small. We'll fix that by selecting the chessboard, selecting scaling, and just scale it up a little bit. And I selected the wrong spot. That should be enough. So now let's try to put the queen in position. She shouldn't be bleeding over the edges anymore. And if you're like me and you keep clicking on the wrong thing, and you don't want to accidentally move the chessboard anymore, something you can do is click on the chessboard. It's camphor box 002 at the moment. Let's rename that chessboard. And click this little snowflake right here. That's going to freeze it. Unfortunately, though, it does ruin the whole point of showing the texture. Yeah. But when something's frozen, you can't actually directly click on it. Instead, you got to come over here to the Scene Explorer in order to be able to interact with it. All right, so we got the queen there, we got the king here, and this chessboard is still too small. Scale it up some more. Queen there, king there. So I am going to set up this chessboard. Next piece is rook. This piece is going to go all the way to the corner. Now rooks appear twice on the chessboard. So once I've got it in position here, what I can do is I can hover over top of this x-axis right here, hold down the shift button, and then drag it off to the other corner. When you hold down the shift button and move something or rotate or scale something, it automatically clones the object for you. So I'm going to click copy, hit OK. Up next we have our knights. Put that knight right there. And let's go ahead and rotate it around so it's facing the front a little bit better. Because the knights are supposed to face their enemy. Hold shift, drag it to its opposing spot. And by opposing, I mean same side, just opposite side of the chessboard. All right, our bishops go here and here. Again, holding down shift while you move something is going to let you make a copy. And then we have our pawn here. I'm going to put the pawn there. I'm going to hold down shift, move it over here, make a copy. Next up, I'm going to hold down control, click that pawn, hold down shift, and you can see it lets me make two copies at the same time. Nice. But what if I select four of them, hold down shift, and drag it to the side? There we go. Quick and easy way to populate the chessboard. Up next, we're going to grab all of our chess pieces except for the knights. Well, you know what, let's grab the knights too. All the back row ones. Zoom out here on the top view. Let's go ahead and expand this viewport. I'm going to hold shift and drag all the way down here and release. Hit copy, and that duplicates those pieces there. Holding down control, selecting all of them, hold shift, drag it down here, and they are now copied. All right, so let's restore the viewport. And our knights are facing the wrong way over here, so let's rotate them the other direction. The rest of the pieces, there's not really too much of a rotate the wrong direction. So again, these two pieces here are pretty much the only ones we need to worry about. And at this point in time, both sides use the same material. So to fix that, I'm just going to box select all of that, hold down Alt to deselect the chessboard, open up my material editor, move over one material, find another preset. Let's go with silver. Might look nice. Material, assign to selection. Let's position our camera here. Alright, I had a minor issue with the recording and the file. So I've got everything back up and I've got materials applied to each side. These aren't the same materials as before I ended the recording. These happen to be solid glass. Now when I click the vendor button right here, what we're going to get is a vendor of our scene. Now you see these little rainbow boxes right here. That's where it's processing the ray tracing going on. It's just finalizing each pass on smaller portions of the image. Once all the boxes go away, that's when our rendering has been completed. And I've gone ahead and rendered a few different variations of materials on these chess pieces. And I'm just going to show them in the slideshow